started as soon as we'll give Moira a chance to get to her spot.
I'll go in.
There you go. Yeah, move on down one. You good? So very good. We'll start and we'll do the pledge as typically do that now, and we're going to go ahead and do that. And I won't make Brad lead us. I will actually do it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everybody to yet another Board of Education meeting. It is our last meeting, Dr. Brown, before a pivotal budget vote next Tuesday. Vote early if you can't vote often, and certainly take the advantage to tell the district what you think about the budget and everything else that we have up. And Brad, do we have modifications?
Yeah, we're gonna have two modifications. If we could add a supplemental personnel report to the consent agenda. It's a supplemental dated today. And then I'd like to add district business item 10.5, and that'll be the SB contract.
Let me just, yeah,
Next to the
10.5.
last page, 10.5.
It's always nice to get a union contract settled. And we will have an opportunity to discuss and review that in a few minutes. And public comment period. And, right, modifications are approved, thank you.
I'm going to apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. The first person is Karina Lockenhall.
Yes. Hi. My name is Karina Lockenoff. I have children in elementary and middle school. A few weeks ago, I was one of several parents who came here to talk about hate speech, bullying, persistent classroom disruptions, and physical injuries to students and teachers. This was my first board meeting, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I have to say I was a bit surprised. The board told us to go to the PTA. I've been a member for 7 years. They told us to go to the state. I've been calling them since the gap elimination adjustment. The board told us to go back to our school leadership, but they had just told us it was a staffing issue. The board told us the issues were cyclical, so we just wait. The board told us that this was normal development. Now, I'm a professor of human development. I know that mood swings and limits testing are normal, but hate speech and physical attacks on your classmates and teachers are not. They happen if there's a lack of supervision. The board told us that ESPs are just policing children, that teachers are not doing a good job. Really? The board told us that the socio-emotional learning initiatives reduce the need for adult supervision. In fact, I know, because I know the stuff, that such programs are great for improving school climate, but there's no evidence whatsoever that they can replace skilled professionals in the classroom. Finally, one of the board members asked us, what are we teaching our children? Well, I'm teaching my children to be an upstander, not a bystander, when there's bullying, and that's why I'm back today, because the children's needs in the district are not being met and they can't wait. The very day after the last board meeting, my kid was yet again pushed in the hallway. This time he fell and skinned his knee, but no teacher was there to intervene or even notice. Now my kid is a boy, he's tall for his age, he's an athlete, he's neurotypical, he's living with 2 straight parents, and yes, he's white like me. That's a lot of privilege right there, and if he's not feeling safe, if he's getting physically injured in school, then I'm concerned about all the kids that don't have that kind of privilege and whose parents don't have the time, the money, the education, the energy to show up at school board meetings. In fact, when people heard that I had been speaking out, they started telling me their stories. The anti-Semitic signs sprayed in a school bathroom, bathrooms that were locked because someone set a fire, dangerous bullying during elementary recess, kids who were afraid of school, parents who decided that homeschooling was the only option. Now I know the stuff is complex and we have to think at the systems level, but we can't ignore that in this school district we have 26% fewer ESPs than last year, and having fewer adults for supervision is having real consequences for our children. If this district can't address the basic need for safe and supportive classrooms, we can't think about capital improvements, and I at least can't think about curriculum changes. We need you to acknowledge that there is a problem, that staffing is part of the problem. We need to see solutions in the budget. Thank you, thanks for your time, and for the time you put into your work. I know you care, and because I know you care, I hope you will listen this time. Now I have to run because my son is having a band concert next door, but I will listen to the recordings and I will take your answers very seriously and I will vote accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Catherine. Thank you. I apologize.
So I'm actually here tonight because I'm also privileged enough to be here. I am childless and I've been asked to represent some of my colleagues who have children and could not be here tonight because of their children. And I'm also actually going to have to run at the end as well to go take care of some other things. But I have messages that 2 of my colleagues wanted me to read tonight. Good evening, everyone. Catherine kindly offered to read these words for me because I could not attend tonight's board meeting. It's a bit ironic that I bring this up via proxy. I've heard it mentioned to parents on a few occasions outside of board meetings that they should attend board meetings and committee meetings to voice whatever concerns they are bringing up. That this is the venue to reach out to board members. And while that is likely true, it is easier said than done. Perhaps you are in the thick of it or remember how full-on raising young children can be. Most of us work, many of us work past 5 o'clock. Evenings are filled with commitments, homework, extracurriculars, dinner, bathing, packing lunches, caring for pets, and more. Some families have even more to contend with: night shifts, second jobs, therapy for their children, medical treatments for their children, aging parents, their own health issues. Childcare is not only expensive, but difficult to line up. Partners aren't always available to be home with the kids. Single parents obviously don't have that built-in support. Some parents bring their children to meetings with them. Often they are met with warmth, but scolding stares are common too. Sometimes parents are criticized for bringing their children. This is a long way of saying we can't always make a meeting, but we can reach out at other events or through email or via proxy. It doesn't mean we don't care. We are just doing our best. Please try to meet us where we are. My second colleague. I've been coming to board meetings for 6 years now, and over again, I hear that the board meetings are not the appropriate place for people to bring their concerns, that people should instead attend the committee meetings. There is a large segment of our community that cannot attend these meetings. They don't have childcare, they don't have transportation, they have to work, or even all of the above. The agendas are often posted the day before, so you can't tell if it is going to cover something you can contribute to the conversation about. I think it pretty non-representative of our elected officials to scold or rebuff people when they do come to a board meeting and to tell them that they have come to the wrong meeting. I communicate with these families daily, and I fear their voice is being lost in these conversations. Board meetings are hard enough to attend. We have to acknowledge that those of us in this room right now probably have some privilege that allows us to be here. And in this district, we know that, which is why we broadcast the board meetings and have things like the teletown hall. I've also heard board members say that concerned community members should call or email. I'd like to point out that I have never had a response to any of my emails, including the one I sent directly after the last board meeting. So what is the best way to communicate? At the last board meeting, one of the board members indicated that teachers need to start doing their jobs. I'd ask the same of these elected officials before me. Do your job and listen to the students, parents, and teachers. 3 years ago, I came here to tell you that our special education teachers were overworked and that we needed more support for our students in need. In 3 years, I was on my 7th special education teacher, and the board told me they knew the needs were increasing. I'm looking for the increase in staffing that is needed in order to support these students, and I don't see it. And I'm currently working with my 9th special education teacher in 6 years, and the needs have quadrupled. So again, I ask the board, please do your job. Spend more than 20 minutes in our schools. Listen to the parents who are concerned and the kids who are scared. Stop getting caught up in semantics, and let's come to the table together to do what is right for kids.
Thank you. Next is Emerson, and I can't see the last name. Hi, Emerson.
Hi, my name is Emmy. I'm a 5th grader at Northeast, but in middle school I'll probably be known as Graham's little sister. Tonight I'm here to discuss a problem that will affect a lot of people. I'm sure many people know about accelerated math and how some adults would like everybody to be in an equal program. Whether or not your kid is advanced in math or struggles, combining kids is not struggle a little bit in math, they will have to keep up with other kids even if they don't understand the concept. Personally, I've been on both sides of this situation. In 1st and 2nd grade, I struggled with math. In fact, I was pulled out and given extra guidance in a small group at my school. It really helped me. I was in a group where other kids were also struggling with the same concepts. We were able to ask questions of the teacher without feeling like other kids were looking at us weirdly. Whenever I was in a math classroom with kids who knew what they were doing, it made me feel defeated. After getting the help I needed needed help in school and I'm now understanding math and concepts much better. I think I'm at least decent at math. In fact, if there's an accelerated program offered, I think I might enjoy being in class. It's generally unfair that the current day middle schoolers are able to have these accelerated programs because they came a number of years before us. My sister, who is 3 years older, had access to these honor programs in 6th grade. Why can't I be afforded the same opportunity? I don't understand who would want a rule where kids aren't being challenged enough, or people who might struggle in math fall even farther behind. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And up next is Deidre. Is that correct?
Hi.
Deirdre.
A few things. Congratulations on the US News rankings of the district. That was really heartening. But I'm really worried that ranking is going to fall. I heard Eldred Harris speaking at the Meet the Candidates meeting, saying that he was blown away by the Charlottesville classroom that he went to see, and he indicated about plans to reduce spending on a child from $19,000 to $8,000 per child. And I wonder how a reduction in spending on our children is going to affect our US News rankings. I'm also wondering why the budget plan is to give pay raises to administrators who are already very well paid of between 4 and 7%, and giving teachers only 0.8%, and special education teachers nothing. To me, that smacks of corporate America, and I really think that our teachers and our special ed teachers deserve more. I'm wondering why the elimination of accelerated math in grades 6 and 7 is happening, because it's going to increase the spending of money on increasing teacher ratios for children who would have been in accelerated math and don't need an increase in the teacher ratio, and it's going to increase costs for busing people to zero period and of teaching extra modules to students who don't need it. I also think that the elimination of accelerated math is like, if you've got 8 classes of math at DeWitt and you've got 5 of them taking regular math and 3 of them taking accelerated math, I think of the 3 children doing accelerated maths as having puppies. So because you don't like the look of the class of 5 children without the puppies, and we heard Mr. Ainsley talk about not liking the look of the class of regular math, I think taking away accelerated math is like taking away all the puppies, when all the children who are in the regular math can ask to have a puppy if they want to. Thank you for your time.
That's all the folks who are signed up.
Anyone else wish to speak? If not, we'll move on, and the board will have an opportunity to respond in a few minutes. Sam is getting ready for an international trip to somewhere internationally. So from LACS, with a hi, it is all yours.
So to begin with some sports, our girls lacrosse team is currently undefeated in their division, which we're all very proud of them for. And both the boys and girls teams had fun but sad senior nights last week as they said goodbye to all of their seniors for this season. Baseball is having a very successful season with a current record of 9-3. I think they play today, maybe. So that maybe adjusted. And then the whole school has been really excited the last couple of weeks because we've rallied behind our unified basketball team in their 2nd official season at the school. So you'll see the last 2 Thursdays, everyone's pretty much been out of the games.
So the boys varsity tennis team has been doing very well. They recently won the STOC championships, and they won sectionals last Wednesday, winning both first in singles and doubles. And last week, both the boys and girls track and field teams won the STOC West championships, and Captain's Council is hosting a Captain the Flag tournament this Sunday to fundraise and show support for athletics.
On a less uplifting note, the AP exams started last Monday and they end this Friday afternoon. Next, on Wednesday, May 29th, the IHS choir concert will be held in Culp Auditorium. Also, junior prom will take place this Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. at Cornell's Johnson Museum of Art. And lastly, the ICSD Insider actually talked about this, but IHS senior Rowan Lynch made a rare academic achievement by scoring a perfect score on the AP Advanced Placement U.S. History exam. So, congrats to him.
I am told he is one of 16 in the world.
One at 16.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the country. Right. Like the universe thing. Right. Okay.
The galaxy.
What great news have we got? Anything else? Are we good? All right. Board responses for anyone who wishes to respond at this time. The superintendent's report will be a bit longer, Dr. Brown. You're going to address a few things that's been on our minds, correct? If I'm not mistaken, if the board wishes to speak.
I'll address, I would like to address, I think, all of the comments, but I will address specifically the two that involved changes to the math curriculum and the phrase that I keep hearing, ending accelerated math. I understand that it is often difficult to get to committee meetings, but following on the community conversation we had a few weeks ago at DeWitt Middle School, the chair of our curriculum committee, Eldred Harris, called for a lengthy discussion of the changes to the math curriculum at our curriculum committee meeting, which was 4:30 to 5:30 today, and some discussion was had, lengthy discussion about necessary curricular changes to the math curriculum in the middle and the high school and the reasons for this. I am the mother of a 35-year-old and a 23-year-old, both of who went through the accelerated math program, one to AB Calc and one to BC Calc. The one who went through BC Calc is making more money than the one who went through AB Calc.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. There you go.
But one glaring bit of information, is not a bit of information, it's actually a lot of information that has not been addressed by previous meetings, or I think not clearly addressed, and which families, I think, are unaware of, is that in the last several years there have been significant and substantial changes to the Common Core curriculum in math. That is, what level of math and amount of math is required by New York State. And over the past 3 or 4 years, the expectations for all students in every math grade 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on up has been substantially increased. And what that means is that the old way of accelerating, which was cramming 3 years into 2 or 2 years into 1, simply has not worked for the last several years. That is, there are so many more expectations at each level. In fact, we had Steve Weisberg in today, and he's chair of the math department at Ithaca High School. He said that what used to be Algebra 1, which used to be the 9th grade math that 8th graders took, is now 8th grade math. And that the Algebra 1 that's taught at the high school is so substantially more complex and rich in coverage that it was a leap, that the kids were not learning this math in middle school, and they were especially not learning this math in middle school if they'd accelerated. And what they have found over the last 3 or 4 years is huge numbers of children going through the accelerated curriculum, coming into the high school with huge and detrimental gaps to their mathematical knowledge and abilities, and that furthermore they were finding more and more kids who were going through the accelerated math program who got to high school and gave up and said, I can't do this, it's too hard, it's not fun, I'm just going to Regents, that we were seeing mathematically talented kids tracking out of math. That's been the experience of your math teachers at the middle school and the high school. And so this is not an ending of accelerated math by any means. The plan for more, a more diverse and creative and multiple methods of teaching math are actually meant to track more students into the higher and more accelerated math tracks, make more kids more successful, and increase the level of participation in and success at higher level math, which is a skill that we all need. That was our hour today.
Thanks, Ben. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, there were a few things said, and when we expressed and explained about having conversations at the committee meetings, it was not to exclude anyone, but as you can see, standing up, reading a speech, and not being available or having the opportunity to dialogue prevents any forward momentum or conversation. That's why we shared committees are the time and the places to have those. However, we also said we're available for email and to reach out to us. So I think things were taken out of context or misunderstood in that light, that was the only way to have a conversation, but that is the best way. And just the implication to say that the board doesn't care, or we would not be doing this or engaging in this way. And I really struggle with some of these assumptions and some of this dialogue, and I really want to stress over and over again how we have approached these situations and how we have dialogued. Now, I understand folks are passionate, and I respect that. But if you, and I'm going to go out on a limb, everyone wants positive change. But when you look at some of the things that were said regarding behavior, we heard it was because of reduction ESP, but then we heard it was because of inclusion, then we heard it was because of this. And there's a lot of beliefs, and we want to have this conversation, but we can't just go on beliefs without having a conversation. And I just really want to stress that. I want to ask folks to be careful how we're dialoguing, because there's a lot of accusations going on, and I don't want to participate in that. I want to have the conversation. I want to work and move forward as a community to make these changes. That's it.
Go ahead, Brad.
I just wanted to correct a couple of things. Our colleague who's not here, Elder Terrace, never said anything about trying to reduce our spending. He noted how much they spend in Charlottesville. He didn't say we were trying to match that in any way or make any such changes. That was not what he said at all. He just noted that they have a different cost structure than we do. That's another whole conversation we could have another time. But he did not say we were trying to do that. So that's an unfortunate comment about what he had to say. As far as differences in pay increases, I'm not quite sure what you're looking at. I'm sure our administrators would love to be talking about 7% pay increases, but that's not the case. Most of our pay increases are subject to collective bargaining agreements. We'll be approving one tonight. One of those collective bargaining agreements tonight, it'll have a 4% in its first year for our SBs. We're in negotiations with the teachers. We expect that to be settled relatively soon. That'll have a 4.5% in the first year. So, we're aware of where the pay is. We know we need to make improvements. We're making offers to make those improvements. I know that our administrators, I think the last contract the IPDA is under, I think it's at 2% plus 1,000 because they made a concession on health insurance that others did not make. So if what you're looking at is just a gross number, that doesn't tell you what's behind it and how the contract reads. So just wanted you to know the facts on those items.
Go ahead.
I just want to reinforce one thing that Brad just said, that our budget that we'll be talking about for this upcoming year includes a 4.5% that we're planning for our teachers. We have not settled that contract, but that's what we're hoping for and planning for, and so I want to make sure that we sort of take a look at what that budget line is for our complete budget as well. I am oftentimes the one that sort of encourages folks to come to committees. Very much aware of the difficulty of working. I provide childcare on a regular basis for my grandchild, and it's a struggle for me as well. I hope that at no point in time did I say that this was the inappropriate place for these conversations, or for people to bring their concerns. I want to reinforce something that my colleague Chris Malcolm said. Much more importantly, that this format and this structure does not allow us to engage in dialogue. And so the idea is that if we can use our committee structure, we are much more likely to be able to engage in conversation and dialogue, go back and forth, exchange ideas. And we are considering a number of things to sort of change that. So we have the Let's Talk portal that's online. We encourage folks to use that. Please do. We were just having a conversation earlier with Dr. Brown and his team talking about, and there will be a imagining and a reintegration of the community conversations that will be taking place. And a couple of board members have been having conversations about sort of a Board of Education roadshow, where we know that we need to get out to schools in different ways. We've done that in the past. Everyone's life gets hectic, and so that hasn't been as active as it has been, but it will be coming up over the next year, particularly as we have a multitude of conversations. Should the proposal pass, we would need to be engaged in as many dialogues about how we're making changes to our buildings and our schools. Emails, I can appreciate that. If someone writes me an email, particularly as a board member, and does
to clarify, because I feel like the two comments that were made about teachers not doing a good job had something to do with what I said a couple of weeks ago in terms of thinking about less ESPs being in a specific classroom or in a building. What I said, or what I meant to say, was that even if there are less ESPs in a classroom or in a building, we still expect our teachers to still be able to engage with every single child. And that's what education is. That's what I hope my children are getting when they go into a classroom, that they're expected to receive a full quality education, regardless if Ms. Kellyanne is not there, regardless if Ms. Katie Catroti, the reading teacher, is not there, that their head teacher is still going to engage with that child as if they were any other child in the classroom. So my intention was not to say that our teachers were not doing a good job, but that as a board and as a parent, that I expect all teachers to still put their best foot forward, even if they're not specialized in a special area. And Eldred isn't here, and I don't want to speak for him, but I know that there was another comment in terms of teachers' aides or ESPs policing children. I think he was trying to say that in some ways they are treated as individuals who are supposed to monitor children who have behavioral issues, who have mental disabilities or other conditions. And that is a way in which some of them are used. That is not to say that all ESPs operate that way, or that's the way in which they see their jobs, but sometimes they are utilized that way, and that is a reality, and that's not to say that everyone does that, and we are trying to move away from that. We're trying to have conversations about what we hope to see for support in our classrooms and for our children. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
And I also want to thank you for coming in to talk about what you want in a classroom and what your needs are.
I just wanted to clarify once again, because the idea of this 20-some% cut in SBs, Dr. Brown has said weeks ago, that is not the case. We have not cut the number of SBs. I'm correct?
Yeah, y'all taking all my superintendents, but I was gonna get to that. I'm kinda enjoying it though. Yeah. But no, we have not, and I'll reiterate it again.
Yeah, so there has not been a cut in the number, so I don't know. I am sorry that you keep saying that.
But we'll get to Dr. Brown will address some items. Go ahead, Maura.
I just want to say, as a retired English language arts teacher of 35 years, you know, what I'm hearing tonight are about the great challenges of communication, and that people often are heard as saying something they didn't mean. And so it, you know, after, it was interesting to me because I was not at the last board meeting and then to hear someone characterize things that this board said, what really took me aback, because it really did not sound like the people that I have been working with for the last 4 years. But what I'm just thinking a lot about now, and I'd like to, with the board, talk about how is it that we are heard to be saying things or to be adopting a tone which I know is not intended. So I just think, as Sean has been saying, communication is key, trying to find the right forum to have that communication. And initially, hearing my fellow board members characterized as being scoffing and rebuffing, I get defensive, because I think, that's not us, but I have to let that defensiveness go, because if that's what people are hearing, we need to figure out how to do better.
Agreed. Thanks, Mark. We'll move on. I will only add, after 3 nights last week of community conversations being involved, it was getting to be a long week, so I did stop by the Unified Basketball game last Thursday. It is, I saw last week, last year as well, a little bit. It just, great evening. Game went to overtime, but talked to Jason Trummel a little bit. I felt a lot better about the district after I went to the Unified Basketball game than probably getting as the week wore on. But again, it's a great program. There's several more home games. They have a travel schedule next week. I think they have like 3 games next week. Traveling, going to some of the stacked, I guess driving, and then but they do play stacked schools as well. So when you have a chance, check out the Unified Basketball game. It is a great experience, and really hats off to the kids that are involved. It was just really something to be a part of and to experience. And so I'm going to leave that. Dr. Brown's going to talk about that. We're going to approve a consent agenda here first.
I'll move the consent.
Second.
Who? Pat won. Second by Pat. Proximity. So. Any?
Yeah.
And that's for later. Okay. So, any questions regarding consent? We good? All in favor? We are 7. All in favor? That's everyone. So thank you. Dr. Brown.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Lane. This is a beautiful night. We have the Northeast Wolves represented tonight, strong. Thank you. We have high schoolers who are talking about reading the ICSD Insider, which is a first, so thank you. And they're quoting the Insider, which is a beautiful publication that now even our young people are reading. So thank you for making me happy. And thank you, board, for taking my thunder. My report, which was going to be 15 minutes, is now going to be probably 3, because I could not do a better job of explaining the why and the what we're doing with mathematics as Pat just did. Again, the committee structure is a great opportunity to have conversation and dialogue, and we had parents and community members show up to the committee meeting to talk about mathematics. And we had math teachers and experts in the room too talking about mathematics. And to clear up some things, yes, there is a plan. I continue to hear from folks that there is no plan. We're just tossing it up and hoping that something good happens. We don't do things like that in Ithaca, and people like me don't stay in this role for 9 years just doing things by chance. There's a very thoughtful plan in place that's been informed and we've been educated by our educators about how to do this better. So the plan is there. What we have done, and what may be causing some confusion, is that we're looking to provide a lot of voice and choice for young people. If you wish to get the additional content and before after school, we are looking to provide that opportunity for you as well. If you're going to embed it in your existing schedule, we're going to provide that opportunity for you as well. So we're looking to provide multiple options for young people to be prepared for algebra in 8th grade if they choose to be, or to do accelerated mathematics at the high school level. Our educators have thought long and hard about this, and there are plans, there are complex plans that are going to be personalized for every young person. So if you have more questions about that, let me know. And then I'll refer you to Steve Weisberg and Colin Gray. But there are some folks who know all about this, who've been talking about it for years, who are national expert in mathematics instruction, who are good and who are gonna make sure every young person's needs are met, especially the kids from Northeast, trust me. Math, that's the math one, so thank you, Pat, for helping me out with that. Another thing we've been hearing out there is that we're moving away from providing CSE chair responsibilities. There's a lot I cannot talk about tonight around the CSE chair transitions that will be happening hopefully, because we're in the midst of contract negotiations and with hopes that we're gonna ratify a contract that will include some language about our CSE chair responsibilities shifting. We cannot go forward without providing that kind of support. We will have that kind of support, but what it looks like is something that we're bargaining with, we're talking with folks right now, and quite frankly, we just can't share with people. So, but again, trust that we have a plan in place when it comes to CSE chairs. ESPs, thank you, we approved we ratified, the contract has been ratified, and we're hoping, well, it's probably premature for me to talk about it, but I hope that the board will vote in favor of a contract. Back in December, we rolled out a very aggressive compensation strategy. At the time, we were talking about 6-year deals and looking to increase salaries minimally by 20%. Our board is being supportive of that. That is significant. That is probably one of the most significant shifts in compensation in my opinion, and probably in the board's last 20 or 30 years to do that kind of a shift in compensation. It's a very aggressive strategy, probably one of the most aggressive strategies in our region, and if not the state. That is just a fact. We've been talking about it publicly since November, December, and now we're settling contracts that are gonna support that. So the narrative out there, and I'm getting passionate about this one because my mama is an ESP, was one for 46 years. So when she hears folks saying that I'm a part of cutting the ESPs, it hurts me. And it's not true. Frankly, we've added building-based ESPs during my tenure here. And I'll put our ratios of ESPs to students up against any other person, any other school district in our state. That is a fact. And we've done the analysis. So we can talk about what people believe, but I'm looking at facts. And when we look at our ratios of ESPs to students and staff, we have the best ratios in the state. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've increased our building-based aids. Now, what we must do by law is allocate resources when it comes to ESPs by IEPs and 504s. And we have had to right-size that. While we're still overstaffed when it comes to that, we've had to do some work to get us more in line and more compliant with IEPs and 504. That's just fiscal responsibilities, particularly in a situation where we're trying to increase our compensation for our staff by at least by 20% over 6 years. So we gotta look at our staffing. But to say that we're cutting is just not true. And if you want to talk about how we do support our students and our staff when it comes to ESC support, just talk to me about that. And I'll show you the best ratios in our state, and also the best student-teacher ratios in our state as well. So I'm not hearing anyone talk about that. So that is just a fact, and you already addressed that as well, but I want to reiterate the fact that we aren't cutting, we're actually enhancing our programs. And I think I've covered everything else. Thank you, Mr. Anthony, for this opportunity this year.
Very good, Dr. Brown. So on to school district business. Just the first item, it should be pretty quick, but the May 13th budget hearing and teletown hall. Did you want to address that, or did we want to talk about that?
The teletown hall, I'm sorry.
The budget hearing and the teletown
Yes.
hall. Were there particular questions we wanted?
It's on the agenda.
Oh, cool.
Were there questions that we wanted to feature, or were?
Amanda, do we have anything that came out that we wanted to make sure we reiterate?
No, our budget teletown hall, and our budget hearing was hosted, yesterday evening. They're actually a back-to-back event, so the budget hearing is open for people that are able to, attend on-site and have that dialogue. It was sort of a roundtable. For folks that cannot, attend, that teletown hall is actually, a platform that we use where all taxpayers receive a phone call from the district. They can stay on the line if they so choose and be able to participate. It's broadcast live. You can actually ask questions. We took a number of questions from the public, via that opportunity. So again, we sort of do that to reach out to you, so there's sort of no effort on anyone's part. Again, if there were questions, a lot of information is being mailed to folks. There's information that can be found at the main offices of all the elementary schools, along with places like the library and town halls in areas that are throughout our district. The mailers are a summary of sort of the highlights of the budget, and it's pretty prescribed by law. The budget presentation documents that are found at the offices that I listed in your schools and in communities have a much deeper level of information. It includes the line-by-line budget document, which in and of itself, obviously you can imagine we're not putting like exact lists of names of people and all the things that fall underneath it. So that is a comprehensive overview, probably about 5 pages worth of what our $131 million budget is comprised of. Folks have to remember that the budget captures sort of the planning to a certain date and time. And so I'm glad that the board mentioned that a lot of things are unfortunately under negotiations, and so therefore a budget document can't actually in a line item represent things that are in negotiations. Again, I completely understand about committee schedules, and a lot of this discussion happens at those, so if it's okay, I'd like to just reiterate some of those conversations. One of the things that we talk about at the committee level is when salaries are being discussed in negotiations, you can't put them in those line items, so they actually land in what's called a salary settlement line, which is why you can't see what we've budgeted moving forward. So we've actually talked about ESPs, which are getting a 4%. Teachers, we budgeted 4.5%. Things also have moved around from one year to the next, so you might see a decrease in the line. It's not because staff is cut, it's actually because we, this year, are actually required to code things by building versus often by budget code because of ESSA, which is the tracking system for the state. So I am happy. I was actually texting Dr. Brown saying, I think it's really important that I pull together an FAQ that'll be available online. You don't have to come to anything, but you do have to go to the website, but I can put that together for folks so that people understand sort of how that works. And so, I just want to be clear, whatever a bargained unit agrees to, it applies to all members of the bargain unit. So you will not see certain areas of bargain unit, like special ed teachers getting a higher level increase than, let's say, music teachers or general ed teachers or math teachers. That's just not how the contractual obligations of negotiated contracts work. Everybody sort of is treated in terms of moving up. There are differences, and again, those are the specifics that you can find in the negotiated contracts. That's not on the budget site, that's actually in the human resources site. So the human resources department, if you scroll on their website, you can actually see copies of all the bargain contracts right there, so that if you are curious to date of sort of what the budget represents in terms of salary increases, and those contracts are settled, they are housed there, they're warehoused there. So they are very easy to find, they're right there listed on the site. Other things that are included, obviously we have a lot of budget growth and development. That's just the cost of doing business. The price goes up, supplies go up, equipment goes up, the cost of our people, our benefits go up. We were fortunate this year that some of the benefits that we offer, employees retirement system and teacher retirement system that is paid for in perpetuity in someone's lifetime, not their career, their lifetime, those rates are set by the state. And so those actually did decrease. It's not that we're cutting benefits, those are actually a state set rate. And so sometimes you'll see when salaries go up, those benefits packages actually go down because that's a state rate. It doesn't mean that anybody's retirement is being diminished. It just means it's a really well-funded program at a state level, and they don't have to charge back the districts more than they need. Health insurance we pay for on our own, you'll see that that's going up 7%. Again, if you look at the bargained agreements, most bargained units pay a small portion of that, typically about 20% or 22%. Our healthcare plans are upwards of about $18,000 or $19,000. The district, i.e. the taxpayers, pick up the rest of that amount. And so those, you'll see those increases just because we pay for claims, and those all go up on medical, health insurance, and prescription as well. So that's just a broad summary of some of the things that were brought up in the teletown halls, in the budget hearings, and also things that may have been covered. And so again, I apologize for that sound bite in 4 minutes, but I tend to get pretty good at it. So I hope that helps people understand a little bit of sort of what you're looking at and actually what it means and what it represents.
And Amanda, you did mention one thing that actually triggered something in my mind. Governor Cuomo, did it start this year, wanted to track resources at how they are allocated to each building in the district? Before it was just,
Yes,
so that started this
by
year? or-
August, yes, so by August, there's two different reports. There's a federal report and then a statewide report. So the business office will be actually submitting data at a state level this year and then the federal level the following year. And so we needed to take our budgets, and you'll see in the budget, there's a number of numbers that go along with each of the budget lines. They each mean something. We needed to start to look at our budget, and the numbers a little bit further down that number tracking to the building code. Because they're actually wanting to look at the way that we expend monies by building so that one building doesn't receive more than another building. And so that you'll look at those numbers from the taxpayer supported and state aid supported budget. You'll also look at the title funded budgets to look at the comprehensive way that we support our schools. Title budgets are not voted on by the public, but the general fund budget, the taxpayer and state aid dollars are voted on by the public.
This is fairly recent from the governor with the idea that higher, wealthier districts or schools were funneling money just to good schools, and schools that had more challenges were not getting the resources they needed.
That's
So they
right.
wanted all districts to track those funds
That is
throughout
correct.
the state.
That is correct. And so the reporting methods, one will track the actual expenditures, what you spent, the other will track how you budgeted. Okay, so we have our feet in
The state is
both.
retrospective and the feds are prospective.
That's
They-
right.
They couldn't agree on the same
That's right.
system.
So
This
we
is
do
the
it
first-
both.
This is the first year, right?
For Ithaca, this is the first year. There were other schools that were chosen as pilots. There was about 80 schools that were chosen as pilot programs, and that was great that we were not part of that pool because they did the lessons learned part of the exercise, and we get to reap the benefits of that. So we'll have hopefully a vetted process that we'll be able to utilize on our behalf.
I'm surprised we were not chosen. They like to
They-
choose us for things.
They love to come to Ithaca in the summer and choose us for pilots. Yes, that is true.
Yes, it is. Good, any questions from them?
No, just, it's within the state tax cap.
Correct.
So it's a 50% vote. If the budget is defeated, our choices are,
You get two more chances, right? If a budget is defeated, you get to go back to the public for a vote a second time. If that also fails, then the third time it is the contingency budget. The contingency budget is listed in your budget mailer. It would be a decrease of over $3 million from what we're proposing to the public in our initial round. And the reason for that is that you have to go back and you actually have to use the prior year's tax levy. You cannot exceed the prior year's tax levy to develop that budget. And you have to identify things that are considered to be contingency expenses, and you cannot fund them.
Sure. And this used to be more of an issue in the past regarding budgets not passing, and contingency budgets were fairly adopted fairly regularly around the state. But that second budget vote typically,
would be less money.
well, typically boards would not go out with a larger amount. They would have to try to come out with a budget that the community would support, which is a lower amount.
Okay.
What we would do is we would take that process that we do all year long and we'll condense it to a very short amount of time, a couple of weeks. We'll analyze that budget once again in a very rapidly and efficiently and look for a new budget. And
To be clear, if you didn't pass the requirement of 50%, unlikely that we're gonna adopt a budget that's be a penny higher, because that would require a 60% vote.
Right.
Right? We're at the tax cap, so
you're at the tax cap.
so it'd be unlikely
If you
that we
go,
would even consider going
You'd have to
to
get
a higher dollar amount.
correct,
You'd have to
so,
get a 60%.
We would have to make reductions to our budget, significant staff reductions if we had.
and I just wanna,
I'm just
add a
making,
point.
I just want folks who are listening to understand that if it's voted down, highly unlikely that we would ever add a penny. We would actually go backwards, we'd actually lower the dollar amount, because if we added a penny, it would require a 60% vote. And if you didn't get 50, highly unlikely you're gonna get 60 the next time around.
If we're looking for our revenue to come from taxes, and we're looking to increase the taxes that we're asking to levy to support the budget amount, that requires a supermajority, because we are at the top of the formula.
Right.
We've calculated it, we've come up with we've input the numbers in the formula, it pops out a number that's actually vetted by the state, I had to submit that a couple of months ago. That number, if we exceed that number in that tax cap formula, it requires a supermajority vote, it
I'm just trying
requires 60%.
to answer some of the questions I've seen,
Sure.
people saying we should vote no in order to increase the budget. That, I want people to understand that that would be incredibly difficult and therefore highly unlikely.
Go ahead, Ben.
I'll just add two things to this conversation. One is that, I've been getting a lot of emails saying, are you exceeding the tax cap or not? And when I say no, everyone says, wonderful, great, thank you. I have not gotten a single personal email in favor of increasing spending. But I also wanted to reiterate a point that Brad made last night, and that is if we go to a lower budget or a contingency budget, that then resets our tax cap, and that we would only be able to increase future budgets from the lower several $1 million lower, which means all of the programs that we would have to cut and the people that we would have to let go, we could not put back in a following year. There is no coming back from a contingency budget.
Right.
Soldier on. Well, gee, an impromptu budget discussion, that's great.
Amanda's always looking for reasons.
Thanks, Dr. Brown.
Thanks, Amanda.
My last name is Broba, it's many words.
You saw how I looked at him like, you know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So Perry, you've got a primer on the budget. Perry, good to see you. You are the principal at South Hill.
Yes, I am. Yes, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I'm here to just share a little bit about our year here at South Hill and take questions, and happy to converse with the board about how things are going. So, preparing today's information for you, it's overwhelming to try to talk about what's going on in an elementary school in any given year. So I was looking for sort of a theme, and felt that this year partnership would be a good element to pursue. So what I wanted to share this year is that a lot of our growth in learning for students has come from new and expanded partnerships with the local resources that we have. I think we're a very rich place in terms of the opportunities that our community affords for young people, and we've been looking to take advantage of that at South Hill. So I'm sharing some examples of the way that's played out over the course of the year. Ithaca College and Cornell University have been two really large partners in this. And so one of the examples I want to share is that, and I think I talked about it when I was here last year, our work in reimagining recess and providing more creative and inventive ways for students to play. We included a partnership with the Ithaca College Occupational Therapy Department, where students in their program who are learning about play work and learning about how to expand students' play skills are coming to our recess periods to just play with kids. In the fall, we put out a call for volunteers. We get over 30 Ithaca College students to come out of their studies and programs, and I mean, one of our recesses starts at 10:30, so we were probably getting them up early to come out and play with kids down at South Hill. And it was a really beautiful partnership, and it led to a grant which allowed us to put in some of the infrastructure that other schools did in their IPEI grants. We're having sheds placed later this spring, so that we'll have access to materials, and so that we can really build this and make it a permanent feature of the South Hill program. We have had weekly Spanish language instruction, which is something that I talked about last year too, and asking for the opportunity to look at providing Spanish in an elementary school setting. And it's been a huge success for us this year with a part-time teacher who is providing Spanish to every class, pre-K to 5th, in partnership with our classroom teachers and the originators of that program, who are a few bilingual classroom teachers there at the school. We also expanded our work with Kindness Week by partnering with the Southern Tier Food Bank. Actually, our 5th graders came up with this idea of acting as a host for a food drive during Kindness Week. And we set a goal, which I hesitated to even announce over the announcements, fearing that we wouldn't make it. And so I said, a pound of food for every kid. We're going to have 400 pounds of food at the end of this drive. Well, we ended up with 801. So we're really proud of the work that the 5th graders did in putting that together, and it was a very exciting feature for us. In fact, I somewhat ambitiously promised to get them to, I don't know why I said this, it's not even my thing, buy them all a popsicle if they got their goal. So I ended up having to follow through on that, and as I handed out those frozen bags of sugar, I thought, yeah, maybe I'll come up with a different incentive next year, but it was exciting nonetheless. We also had STEM night this fall, which kind of encompassed all of the variety of partnerships that we're talking about. We had the physics bus. We had 13 groups overall from Cornell, the college, physics bus, et cetera, come and do an interactive evening in the fall related to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It was a huge success. Hundreds of families came down, and we've seen the impact of that extend into the school year. In fact, just Friday, I was in a 1st grade classroom where one of the students approached their teacher asking if he could do the STEM challenge for the month. So he got his mom, and they came up with an experiment and brought in the supplies, and the kids created a closed circuit Mother's Day card that lit up when they connected the battery to their little light. And it just was really neat to see something that you do in kind of a big picture idea of having a community STEM night, and then you see it inspiring kids to, their day-to-day work.
Perry, 13 organizations all in one night? I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
all
13, yeah.
in the gym and upstairs in the cafeteria.
We
I'm spread out
actually, we were blessed with good weather, and so we had most of them outside.
Wow.
We did have one of our illustrious parents, Professor Hayes from Cornell, did a planetary exploration in our gym. So yeah, we were spread out all over. It was really something to behold, and it came together in the fall. I mean, we had the idea over the summer, but things that come together, and I think it was September 24th, something like that. So it came together in 3 weeks. So now, having had that experience, we can really build that. I don't think it'll even be bigger and better next year.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it was really great. So I also wanted to just touch on elements from the district's other levers, with regard to culturally responsive practices. We were lucky to have Chris Barley, a 4th grade teacher who's piloting anti-marginalization curriculum, and in fact, many of you remember some South Hill students who came to the board meeting a few months ago to present, along with the high school students, the fruits of their work. We also have had a really interesting student-teacher kind of iteration of conversation around affinity groups in schools and the importance of affinity amongst students of color and the opportunities to have spaces where they can discuss. And it was something that came as a result of an impromptu lunch group at the end of last year, led a group of 20 of our teachers to read Daniel Tatum's book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, which led to a more formal introduction of an affinity group for students of color, so that their voices had a space at South Hill. So it's been neat to see that cycle and that really take off amongst the teachers and the students and build on one another. We also have been looking at our PTA events and programs and the leadership of the PTA board, and making more things suggested donation and not fee-based in efforts to in a well-meaning effort to raise money that ends up benefiting the school, we end up excluding some families who don't want to, confront that entry fee no matter what level we set it at. And ironically, we found this year that in having that conversation and asking for suggested donations, not only are we including more families, we're also raising more money than we were before. Because people, when it's put to them as, this is the beautiful thing about our community, when you say, well, if you put in a little more, you can essentially sponsor someone who wouldn't be able to come without that. People really step up to the plate. So that's been eye-opening as well. And lastly, an update on some inclusion efforts. I think it was at a facilities committee meeting last year. The board approved some upgrades to our lower playground to make them more accessible. We've seen that be really successful. And in fact, our pre-K speech-language pathologist proposed some improvements even to that in adding communication boards on our playground. So for those who might not be familiar, especially in early childhood, some students communicate using picture cues, and those are often in kind of laminated notebooks or include a lot of Velcro and are pretty, and a lot of times they're digital now, so they'll come on the iPad. Not always very friendly for use on a playground when you're trying to get around. So she had the idea to bring those directly to the playground, working with Ithaca College, got a grant to build and with the BOE Spirit Department print large format communication boards that will just install permanently right there on the playground so kids can use them at all times. Another really great experience for the school, which we hope to share and spread around through the PE program, is having Move Along Adaptive Sports, which is a nonprofit organization out of the Syracuse area, come to our school and give interactive demonstrations of adaptive sports and activities. So they came for 2 days, worked in our PE classes. All of the students in the school got the experience of riding a reclined bike, playing wheelchair basketball, and sled hockey, which are some of the more prevalent and popular, but I think it was also really eye-opening for students to have the experience of that these opportunities are available for children and adults in the community who have physical disabilities that prevent them from participating in many of the activities that we just take for granted. And that's really become a conversation and connected to the Unified Sports Program, connected to our adaptive PE programs. So we're excited about that. This is something that came from a parent, and we were just lucky enough to be able to take the ball and run with it. But we hope it's something that we can share more widely with the district. So there are a few highlights focused on partnership. So but I'm happy to talk about any other aspect and take any questions.
Good highlights. Any? Pat, go ahead.
Well, I always like to comment as a former South Hill parent that it's a great school, and it's a school that's very rich in its resources because of this traditional long-standing relationship with the college and the way that Cornell University also, that both colleges send kids into all of our schools to help and enrich. But you've got the speech pathology kids and the physical therapy kids and the elementary ed kids who are right up the hill, and I'm always happy to hear of continuation and growth in the community, and I'm especially pleased to hear that PTA events have become both more inclusive and more profitable at the same time. It's a model for us all.
Yeah.
Speaking as a past PTA president.
3 times past PTA president.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've never thought of that. I'm more enlightened now.
There you go.
Brad, go ahead.
The anti-marginalization in 4th grade, are we
Yeah.
extending that? Which which direction next year?
Fifth grade, third grade?
What expansion are you heading toward?
I think fifth grade, but also, it's conversation amongst the district-wide group, that are piloting anti-marginalization curricula, because they're doing it at a number of different grade levels. So, while fifth grade seems like a natural fit for our school, because it would be something that those fourth graders can build on, I haven't yet kind of gotten the debrief of what might be available for third grade and what the other, teams have come up with. So, I'm excited for it to go as quickly as possible, to as many grades as possible, but I definitely depend on the team and Chris's leadership and sharing kind of what makes sense next.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Challenges, Perry? Anything that didn't expect? Is the same, kids show up every day, right? So,
They sure do.
Yeah.
They sure do. No, it's been a pleasure to ride the steep learning curve of being a building leader, coming from a different community into Ithaca. So I think when you say challenges, most of them come to mind are ones that are individual challenges, but that's what makes the job fun for me. I think excitement over the capital plan and long-term planning for what South Hill's gonna look like in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years, and all of that is an interesting big picture challenge for us as we try to predict and be responsive to what our student needs are gonna be, both in like how many students we have and what kinds of what different characteristics, and so that's, I think, kind of a big picture challenge, and that I'm sure is reflected at the district level, but also each school level. It's as a principal, you are trying to think a couple years ahead while also managing the day to day, and I think that's a significant one.
right, and we've been through this process. Most of us have been through this process, and a successful building project at a site is really critical to have. Building leader actively involved and community actively involved in what do we need at that site and how best to do it. I mean, the architects and the engineers, they're just there to make sure, well, we're not building it into Aurora Street or whatever, but what do you need? And really, and that's that excitement of bringing the community together. How can we make South Hill flow better or be better for the kids every day and for parents? And,
Yeah.
Right. So.
I have
Staff,
an annual
right.
mid-year
Right.
survey to staff, and did one also as well to community for the first time this year. First time for me, but it's only been 2 years, so it doesn't say much. But and I think the most revealing and interesting question that's asked on the whole survey is, what do you think South Hill, or what do you want to see for South Hill Elementary School in 5 years? And it's not a hard data kind of question, but reading through those responses is always really illuminating and helpful for me in thinking about what's next for us.
It's critical that it's done right, because we can talk about it, we can design. Once you pour concrete,
Right.
then it's
locked in.
Right, then we're kind of pretty much locked in. We don't want to have to go back in and say, well, that wall, that shouldn't really be there because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or we really wanted something else that's right. So
Having just finished a kitchen renovation, I can.
there you go. Writ large. I mean, it's really the same thing. Yeah, exactly. So great, Barry. Anything else? Well, you have school tomorrow, right? So
That's right.
good. Perry, thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing with us today.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
So we'll move right on, and a resolution regarding code conduct. Sean, you want to speak to that?
I can. I'm going to ask Dr. Brown to speak to it first, because you were brought some colleagues and collaborators to our last policy meeting to have a conversation about some work that members of the ITA did on a culture and climate survey.
Yeah, we're enjoying a fruitful conversation with members of the ITA. They conducted an internal survey around culture and climate. We do an annual goal and priority survey which looks at culture and climate. So we want to come together to talk about the data we're getting, but more importantly, just talk about what can we do to potentially improve our communication, the safety and security of our young people, and our protocols for what happens when we're challenged with certain situations. So we're in conversation, and it leads back to, we can self-reflect, we can engage in hard conversations, which we do, but ultimately it comes down to policy and practices. How are the policies and practices going to change or be the same? And we're at that place now. You've been hearing some self-reflection tonight. Obviously, we're in the midst of some conflict associated with some of the things that we're all challenged with. What does it look like now to change our code of conduct and other processes and protocols? So we're at that place there's a committee that's working together. Mary Gribbles on that team, Keith from Enfield is on that team, and then we have several educators, several teachers on that team as well. So we presented to the policy committee about our most recent conversations and thinking, and now we're looking for some guidance and some input into how we can affect some policy shifts.
And as part of that conversation that we were discussing, one of the things that came up was, continually comes up, is the code of conduct. And is there a way in which to write a code of conduct that is student-centered as opposed to one that tries to stop litigation, which the vast majority of codes of conduct do? And so we thought, rather than just have our policy committee, who has been looking at various codes of conduct for quite some time, or I believe, as Mr. Harris even said, not even calling it a code of conduct, he would be calling it some other language that may be more affirming, but the ways in which that we could work collaboratively. And our board policy allows for us as a school board to create an advisory council, members of which are selected by the superintendent and or designee, probably in collaboration, I would assume, with folks that you've already been working with, as well as any and all board members, student reps as well, parents and caregivers. These meetings would be public, they'd be announced, and we would spend a good 6 to 8 months trying to write a new code of conduct that is somewhat innovative, that is restorative, and that is definitely affirming to the young folks in our building. And so that's the plan behind the advisory committee. Whoever the chair or chairs of the advisory committee are, give a report to the board. We ask that the report is given to all board members, and we have the option of accepting, rejecting, or engaging in more dialogue about any or all of the recommendations. And so that's the idea behind this, is to keep us in dialogue as we're talking about board meetings aren't always the best place, and this would be a place for us to engage in much more fruitful and in deeper conversations around the work that we're trying to do.
It is my understanding that I may be wrong, but to use the advisory council to get a new code of conduct, whatever it may be, in place in not a 2-year period, but in a short period of time.
Best case scenario, we would have a new code of conduct that we'd be able to vote on as a board by July 1, 2020. That's the expectation.
That's 1 year. But
slightly more than a year. But we could always do it beforehand. That's why it says prior to July 1, 2020 would be the best case.
So I wanted to make sure I had Sean on tape in public for that. But not in a joking way.
No,
but in we need to get this done. There's obviously many other policies that we're working through, but we need a new code, and we hopefully will make that happen.
Which verb do you want in the second sentence? Since you have 2 of them.
Yes, is or will.
Strike the is.
Yes.
Right.
The advisory council is investigate, just does not flow.
It's right, I didn't know what.
Depends
what
on
the intent was.
Right.
The intent is to be grammatical.
Depends on what the meaning of is.
Don't try to let it go. You have linguists over there.
Right, I realized that. I was going to talk in my Ebonics tone, but I'll leave it alone. I move the adoption of the resolution for the advisory code of conduct with the noted change of will in the second sentence.
Second?
Second by Pat. Are we good? Moira, any other?
Well, I just want to add, so is there a sense of what are the first steps to establishing this?
The advisory committee?
Yeah.
It's in accordance with policy 2260. We have a board policy that tells us how to establish an advisory council, who can serve on it, and what the implications will be.
should brush up on
We don't-
2260.
Nope. There's
And,
a policy for that.
yeah.
Wow.
Thank God it was in the 2000 series because it's been reviewed, so.
We're working our way. It's only been a decade.
Yeah, I know, so. Only.
But the expectation, Maura, would be that any and all board members would be asked to serve. We would identify, or in conversation, the board officers in conversation with Dr. Brown would identify who else would be on the advisory council, and extend the invitation to all board members who want to participate.
And student representation, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure how many people you're looking at.
That's the superintendent's discretion in accordance with policy 2260.
But I would think certainly student reps to the board, obviously, but also beyond that, I would think, other voices.
We have had students come talk to us about the code of conduct. We will definitely be reviewing that information, and we will find ways to have additional students that, without question, give us feedback and sit on the council.
And we can anticipate that this council will be established by when? The council will be established and get to work.
I would assume probably as soon as we can breathe after the election.
Although, might it be difficult to find student representation over the summer?
It probably will, but it's not gonna stop us from starting these meetings. We have to keep moving, and we can find ways to get feedback as well.
We may have some young people who will be a part of the Aspiring Educators Program. It's a great committee for them to serve on it, so.
So when will elections for student reps to the board for next year be held?
Probably not till early June, because the mandatory meeting's not till May 20, we'll be out of time.
All right, well, there you go. Not all students go away every summer, they may be around, right? I have to work all summer, I'm not sure about it.
It is email.
We just need a few who love policy the way we do.
Anything else? I guess we still have a quorum, yeah, probably. All in favor of this we do have to vote on this, so thank you, that's everyone. Then quickly, Central New York School Boards Association annual meeting. A few of us are gonna drive up and take part in that. And
Move the approval of the Central New York School Boards Association meeting.
Second.
by Maura, and you see the list that may indeed go. And all in favor? That's everyone. And now we come to actually a very important item that we were able to vote on tonight, and that is a union contract.
And let me move, and let me read the resolution since it's not printed in the agenda.
Please.
Be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby approves the tentative agreement between the district and the Education Support Professionals Ithaca executed by the parties on April 9, 2019 and April 26, 2019 respectively, that the contents of said agreement shall be incorporated in the parties' July 1, 2018 to June 30, 2024 collective bargaining agreement.
That's indeed it. Well, that is indeed 6 years, and of course.
6-year agreement.
It has taken a year to get to this point, so it is retroactive, correct?
Retroactive to July.
For this school year.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Just to be clear. I'm not sure I remember the last time we've had a 6-year contract with one of our bargaining units.
Haven't had it with me, the first.
Very good.
We were hoping to have the ITA contract be a 6-year.
That would be great. Certainly a worthy cause. Anything else? All good? Questions? We're good? All in favor? That will be everyone. So, perfect. Congratulations to the ESPs, the district, and the hard work by everyone to get that knocked out. It was a good negotiation. Bob, you're right, it was constructive and on all sides, right?
Bob and Amanda, our negotiation team leaders, they're outstanding.
So just a quick thank you to Bob and Amanda for that work as well, and a thank you for our ESPs and the work that they do every day. We hope that this contract at least gives some small form of the appreciation that we have for your work as well.
And and certainly the union, very much in favor. And they have to vote on it and accept it. And-
They voted overwhelmingly.
Right, very good. I'm glad, it's important, and I'm glad we were able to come to terms. It's great. Anything else? Any other items? There's been multiple meetings already today. Go ahead.
Well, I was in Albany today, so thought I'd bring you up to date on the health insurance reserve. It is out of the two committees in the assembly, so should be going to the assembly shortly. We are nowhere in the Senate yet. Not yet on the agenda. So there are 17 days left in the session. I'd be surprised if I'm back up to Albany one more time. But Ann was there with me today as well. She just continued on to Boston to pick up her daughter. We did spend time on that, and we also spent some time with a number of different legislators on a piece of legislation that got put into the budget, allowing for 3 hours for employees to vote. That's any employer, and it's in the state. It used to have an exception. If you had 4 hours either before or after work, you didn't get the time off. That got struck. So we were lobbying for a change in that, to have that exception placed back in. Met with a number of legislators on that today.
And drove back, and here you are.
Yeah, I drove back, and here I am.
Right. Thanks, Brad. Upcoming dates of importance, a week from today is a fairly important date. Polls open at noon, close at 9. The polling places are, they are posted and listed on their mailing document that I received, I think, at home yesterday. But they're in the usual spots.
They're the
And,
usual spots for a school election, not the location of your general election.
Correct.
So do take a look at the mailer to remind yourself where you go.
And don't we have, the following day, we have to certify the vote?
Yes,
right?
we'll do.
Yep.
So,
The following day, we've got
Well,
a
finance.
delayed finance
Facilities work
facilities
session.
meeting, since we're not having it on the day of the vote.
Meeting on
We
Wednesday.
pushed it over, we pushed it over a day to the Wednesday.
After-
And then we have a board meeting at 8 o'clock to certify the vote.
okay, all right, because that's not listed here.
Right, it's, as is per normal, typical, we always
Yeah.
certify at 8 o'clock on the day after.
We have to do it within 24 hours, so we give the clerk 23 hours.
Tricia?
Hear that, Tricia?
Give her as much time as she might need.
But we might as well get some work done that day, and there will be board members, we just need 5 board members to certify, but
Yep.
we welcome all 9. And then we get into the regular schedule from then on, so. Anything else, Dr. Brown?
No,
Since we,
another special date, May 29th, is Diversity Consortium Roundtable of Tompkins County. We're sending a crew of educators from our school district there, and I mentioned it because Sean is going, Professor Elvis Bravo is going to be the keynote speaker on that day, which is a special thing for us. So if anyone wishes to go with our cadre from here, let me know.
What day is that?
The 29th, May 29th, well,
I hope it's a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's May
Well, that's the
29th.
same night as the,
I know, we're.
dinner.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not going to the
And I'm gonna
Okay.
go with, yes, so, we'll get with you.
And could I just mention that the June 4th curriculum work session will be yet another session on the new math curriculum, and this will be following a work session, a planning session by math teachers and administrators, which is going to take place tomorrow, so we'll have an update on that.
Very good.
Curriculum and policy.
Yeah, that's curriculum policy and human resources.
That's a long day for you, Marvin.
Oh, yeah.
A triple header?
Meetings.
That's today.
Can you do a triple header? I don't know. my pen away, so that must mean I'm done. So, anything else? Anything high, anything else? Oh, good, all right. Dr. Brown, anything? We stole some of your thunder, apparently.
I'll take it, man.
All right.
I'm just over here.
All right, very good. Thanks, everyone. We are adjourned.
Thank y'all. Good to see you.